I got a question on Patreon about video games. Why would people want my opinion on video games? I'm pretty sure if you go to Google right now and type in opinion about video games, I think there are at least 5 or 6 guys on the internet already working in that lane. Think on YouTube, if you search for opinions about video games, I think you're going to find a few people volunteering to fill this void, this niche in your life. But I understand the question on Patreon, it was an intelligent question. It was asking for intelligent reasons. And I have had a question from no less a voice on YouTube than Vegan Gains himself. Vegan Gains wrote to me a couple months ago, I think, saying that I should reevaluate my stance on video games. He said, look, video games are not just Sonic the Hedgehog anymore. Whatever that means. He said they're now an in-depth, plot-driven, narratively complex art form like cinema, and that therefore I should change what I have to say about them. And I wrote back, without giving any particularly deep thought to it, and said, if I knew someone who spent 40 hours a month watching cinema, I'd say you have a serious problem. I said I don't have a different bar for cinema than I do for video games. And 40 hours a month, that's not that much time to spend playing video. in terms of what's normal today. A lot of the so-called, the high-priced release titles, not cheap video games, they'll say on the box how many hours of playtime they have. And sometimes it's 40 hours and 50 hours and 80 hours. And people on the internet will commonly boast they played the game through twice. So, if it was a 40-hour game, that they played it for 80 hours. I've seen, too, some video games actually have a clock. Like maybe when you start up and quit for how many hours you spent playing the game in total. So you've wasted 100 hours of your life or something playing this game. But no, I wouldn't let a cinephile off easily. I wouldn't let a cineast off easily. This actually comes back to the particular question I was asked on Patreon. I mentioned it in one of my dating advice videos in passing. I was like, look, unless you're someone who works inside the video game industry yourself, blah, blah, blah. And the Patreon supporter was interested in challenging me on that and saying, hey, wait, how is it really different if you're an industry insider, if you make video games if you produce them instead of just consuming them, right? Yeah. And I would say the same about cinema. If I knew someone who was watching 120 hours of movies a week, well, if that's your profession, if that's your career...
120 hours a week.
Sorry, a month.
A month.
120 hours a month. But anyway, if it's someone who's really devoting a lot of time to just watching cinema back to back, you know what I mean? Watching one film after another. Yeah. Well, if that is your career, if that's the meaning of life, if that's how you make the world a better place, is by making your own films or playing some role in the film industry, maybe you're a film editor or something, okay. Maybe it's still problematic. Maybe it's still a problem. If you know someone who spends all their time doing tax returns, maybe that's a problem too. You know what I mean? I'm not like saying, just because it's your job, now it's not an ethical issue. It's not something we have to think about. Or even a strategic issue, even an intellectual issue, a quality of life issue, But for me, yes, there is a difference between being someone employed in the video game industry, working in a creative capacity, creating video games. Again, maybe your way of making the world a better place, however small or however large. You may be an artist in the video game industry or a programmer or something, or a musician. I know they employ all those people. Sure, to me that is different in exactly the same way that being a filmmaker is different from merely being a film viewer. Sure. And I think this links to something else was discussed in Patreon. It comes up all the time. The conclusion to my 30-minute video about Chiang Mai, Thailand, which is just posted or reposted a couple days ago. In just the last couple minutes, I say, look, these young people in Chiang Mai, Thailand, who think they're young and hip and on permanent vacation, some of them, not all of them, but many of them look down their noses at the old people who are there who are retired. And I say at the end of that video, I challenge them. I say, well, look, if you're in your 20s and you're already retired, why do you think you're cooler than or better than someone who maybe worked for 40 years of their life and is now retired? I mean, you're both there on permanent vacation, both wasting your lives. This old person who's retired there, maybe they at least had one stage of their lives where they were really motivated to make the world a better place, where they were really motivated to accomplish something, when they had some ambition, deep or shallow, great or small. You know what I mean? Why don't you have that ambition now when you're in your 20s? Why are you on vacation? And, you can ask that about people who are, wasting their time in Chiang Mai, Thailand. But you can also ask it about young men who are sitting on the couch playing video games for hundreds of hours per year.
Yeah.
I think that's an important question worth asking. And yes, apropos Vegan Gains' question, I would ask exactly the same question of a young man who's spending hundreds of hours watching movies instead of video games. There's no difference for me there. Or hundreds of hours playing billiards, playing pool, playing snooker. It's the same problem. And I'd mentioned, as a civilization, before video games were ever invented, we did have the same problems with addiction to a stack of playing cards.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I did that research on the mass murder out on the eastern part of border between Russia and China and Japan. Fascinating essay, by the way. Nikolaevsk-on-Amur massacre. In the intro to that book, it mentions that the men in the village during winter, because during winter they'd be snowed in, and they'd be snowed in and they'd gamble for 3 days straight, with nobody. They'd put logs on the fire and they'd play poker until the snow had cleared or whatever.
Yeah.
They'd be snowed in gambling 72 hours. So this element of human nature has always existed. It doesn't just rely on technology. But again, from my perspective, yeah, I'm going to judge. I'm going to judge you whether you're my own son or my own daughter or my own brother or whatever. Yes, if you're spending hundreds of hours, whether it's playing video games or playing card games, playing snooker or billiards or watching movies.
Watching sports. Think
Sure.
of how much time
Absolutely.
I spent watching sports. If you watch 2 football games in one day, it's
know.
most of your day.
Unbelievable.
It eats up most of your
And
day.
and it's most of your human potential. It's most of your potential as a human being. Whether you want to exercise that potential through curiosity, through learning something new, or through ambition, trying to make the world a better place, trying to do something, anything,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a question, the seriousness of which it may frighten some people. And we were just talking about this. A lot of people in our generation, in our culture, they don't want to have any friends around who judge them. They don't want to have a friend who's going to tell them, man, you're really slipping up. You're playing video games for hundreds of hours. Or if it's not video games, you're watching sports for 2 hours. Dude, you have to really think about what you're doing with your life, short-term, long-term.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's another aspect of it. I think of a lot of people in our generation. On some level, they are ashamed, even if it's just that they're ashamed that they're squandering their own potential. Like, they don't regard video games as inherently shameful.
Right.
And I would agree with that fact. I don't regard a deck of cards as inherently shameful. If you own a deck of cards, and I'm like, oh, the devil. The deck of cards is not shameful. It's spending hundreds of hours playing cards or losing hundreds of dollars, wasting thousands of dollars gambling. Sure, that's another issue. But just talking about time, energy. But I think a lot of people in our generation, they have a sense of squandering their human potential, what they could be accomplishing in so many fields, and again, including just curiosity. Just, I say this to my girlfriend, we're out walking, and I'm thinking, there's this book I was meaning to read a couple years ago and haven't gotten around to reading it. I should look up and get a copy. Just stuff. And, that kind of curiosity can lead to and inform and enrich your other ambitions in life. And it can enrich your relationship with your girlfriend, and it can make you a better person. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you get that book and you decide it's a piece of crap, you throw it in the garbage, and it's some other book, some other interest, some other language, something else you do with your time. But yeah, I think part of the fragility of people our age who only stay with a clique of friends they made in high school, and they really stay closed off, it's because a lot of what they're doing with their time, low-key, they're ashamed of. Mm-hmm. And they're ashamed, and it does cut deep. It's all the way deep, because you're not just ashamed of what you're doing with your time. You're ashamed of, who you are, who you're going to become, who you are in the future, and some residual sense of who you could have been.